you doing this morning?
Good, thanks. How are you?
How's the summer going for you? Lots
Yeah,
of activities, huh?
I have finally finished with my family
Mm-hmm.
daily, these kind of interfering obligations. So, 3 teenage sons.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
How about you?
Very much so. Busy with family too, to be honest. I've had actually a little bit of a break as far as business is concerned, so I'm enjoying it. Our daughter's expecting, all the daughters expecting.
Oh, when's she expecting?
December 26th. So now it's like
Christmas.
Christmas baby, yeah. And I saw my grandson for the first time, the ultrasound.
Ah,
And so it was nice.
yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, so that kind of gives me I would say, the definition, the energy just to, okay, I know it's now, between now and the 20th and December, I just need to
Get it done.
get it done, exactly. So, and, yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, my daughter getting married in August, so.
I know, I
That'll
remember.
take its own,
Yeah, dynamic, huh?
yeah. It's closer.
Yeah, when did she get married?
17th of August.
That's a nice date. Birthday's a couple birthdays.
Friday. I'm holding it together right now.
Oh, good, so it's not a Saturday weekend, Saturday wedding?
It's not now.
Is it less expensive?
I think I think really they wanted to have it, kids these days, it is such a celebration. Everything is that they're doing is, again, I haven't decided whether kids, she's 20, almost 27, whether they're celebrating life in a good way or whether they're celebrating self-importance in a egocentric way. But everything they do is kind of blown out of proportion. So you can't just have a wedding, you have a wedding weekend. With wine tours on the day after, and, it's, so I think Friday allowed them to figure out how to do it for a longer period of time. They didn't have a bachelor party, they had effectively a week at the beach with a bunch of their friends. And so everything gets, kind of blown out of proportion.
Yeah, Keith and I were looking at each other when we first got married. First of all, we didn't have a 9-month nickel an hour bank account. So it was, rings and that's it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. I never used the voice command on that.
And so we got our first experience truly with Yasmina getting married 2 years ago, and this was a long process coming because I think they were engaged for about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Like that. So they really tested that to make sure that this is the right thing. But it was a weekend. It was a weekend experience. So, and I told my younger daughter, I said, look, hold off on getting married because Richard's probably paying off to get your sister's wedding. But she had a good time. She really had a good time. And like you said, this was a weekend and started Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And for us, it was the first time in a long time that we consistently up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Not so much the party part of it, good morning, but just consistently being up late, up early, late, running all day, so. But, so by the time Monday rolled around, we were totally exhausted. We slept 24 hours straight.
Are we not having a show?
We all had it.
That way. I don't know if that is.
Michael is here.
So,
So I've been told that one
my
morning,
blockhead,
Sharon.
my blockhead lost you. Oh, yeah.
Enjoy. How many people?
She's hoping for 200, but her RSVPs are 150 with 100 still out. So she's worried. She's worried that this could go over 200. So it'll be a big affair. he has a pretty good sized family out of Maryland. And her mother, had a bunch of relationships. And, I would say, I think I invited two sets of friends. And I really wanted to minimize it. I got my own family coming soon. So, it'll be what it'll be.
It's exactly right. And you will find it's the most enjoyable thing after all this, whatever.
I think they'll have fun.
Yeah, well, I basically told my daughter, I said, look, I'm not getting involved in all the details. I'm not a helicopter mom that I have to be involved in everything. There's one thing I'd like to be involved in, and that is picking your wedding dress. And that was the only thing. Everything else, she did a lot of stuff on her own, a lot of stuff on her own. So, you know, it's like, have fun.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I just spent, at the beach, and I spent some time, she was there with her fiance, and I think she was good. I got 10 emails a day from the planner, from her mother, from her future mother-in-law, just, what about this, what about that? And I mean, it is constant. Because you think we're crossing the English Channel to, you know, invade Europe, with the planning that's going in.
What do we do with 4 planners?
Well, she did, I can honestly tell you, Yasmina did not do a planner. She planned a lot of stuff herself. And I was fortunate enough to spend the last 2 weeks before she got married, give her down here.
Yeah, well,
Have fun.
again, my daughter is a planner by trade. She runs an athletic department. But that's kind of what she does, make sure the trains run on time. Uniforms are clean and all that stuff.
She's used to that.
So, yeah, I don't.
Where is she at AD?
She's not an AD, she's the director of operations at Randolph-Macon.
Oh,
wow.
Which is where she went.
Wow.
Not Ashland?
Yeah,
But
in Ashland.
Okay.
Yeah, the other one is now, I don't know if it's.
They did a thing like they did with Mary Washington. It's like the University of, you know.
Well, there used to be 2 Randolph.
Yeah.
Now there's I think it's Randolph.
Yes, yeah. It was Randolph-Macon, then it was, I think they call it Randolph-Macon Women's College for a long time. I don't know if it ever was co-ed
I
before.
don't think so. But again, I don't really.
Yeah, good for her.
My first real experience was when she went there.
Yeah, good for her.
I didn't know it was fine school. I mean, it's small. She's going to Covenant, and so you graduate with 50 of your best friends. And so, you know, that was 250 kids in class. So a step up, but
not overwhelming.
not 6,000
Yeah,
kids in
not
class.
overwhelming, they feel like they get involved.
All right, we're gonna finish this morning. Good morning. Anybody that's watching online, don't forget that you can pick up the rest of these classes on the YouTube channel. So if you've missed them, just go back and catch up with them. But we're on number 8 as it relates to the listing agreement. Obviously, pretty simple. The owner either agrees or doesn't agree to have a lockbox. If they're not agreeing to have a lockbox, they better have a really good reason. We talked as we ended the class last week. The nice thing about the lockbox is you can program it to only be accessed during the time that a owner wants it. So, 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, or whatever the case may be. They're also, if you've got a responsible seller, they can pick it up off the front porch and bring it inside at night if they're worried about it. But it just changes everything in regards to showing. You and Sarah can speak on this probably more than I can, but when people are pulling stuff up and they're trying to get to a lot of different houses in one day, unless the house is really what they want, they don't want to deal with appointment on later or call first, or they want to be able to just go. And then along with that, the different apps out there like HomeSnap and different things like that. Somebody comes up, draws up the street, and they plug it into their computer, and there it is. And they say, oh yeah, this is the house. Hey, how are you? Thank you. This is a house that fits needs, well, they want to try to go and see it right then. And then that's the second part of this. If you're a buyer agent, and you're doing that, you need to be really polite. And, there's some agents that go and they knock on the door and the person says, well, gosh, my kids are taking a nap. And they'll say something like, well, don't you want to sell your house or not? I mean, seriously. And it's just unbelievable, the gall of somebody, that they're knocking on somebody's door and saying, hey, I've got people in my car, I'd like to see your house. And yeah, the sellers want to sell their house, but, can you give me an hour? Or, let me get this finished and I'll get my kids and we'll go to the playground or.
What is a typical policy? I understand there's no policy, but realtors are going to call ahead and say, I think I'll be there around 2. Would they call all the people who were not, assuming the house is occupied?
Right.
They give them some notice. That
Usually in the
planning
agent
to come
notes,
up.
it tells you. It says call first, lockbox, or
But how if it doesn't say that?
that's the sort of, wouldn't you say, Sarah, that's sort of the standard operating procedure. It doesn't say anything, you're calling first to say, hey, I'm hoping to be there between
Yeah.
2 and
You're
3.
you're giving somebody some notice.
Yeah.
As
I
a-
mean, I called an agent last week because they were in MRIS and I'm not, so I couldn't get into the house anyway. And the lady's like, well, can you come between 10 and 7? And I'm like, oh yeah, we were planning on being there between 1 and 3. And
Yeah.
that was fine. She told me.
Now,
When people were
this
in
is
the
why I
house.
love this class. So, Catherine, in that situation, you may or may not know, the fact that it was an MRIS, not in ours. You're not a member of that MRIS, so you've got to ask permission for the offer of compensation. You heard.
Oh, no.
So the MLS is your offer of compensation. So when you see a property in MRS, what you want to do is, hey, this is Catherine Tinky from Roy Wheeler. I want to show this property. When can I show it? 10, 1 to 3, great. Hey, by the way, I'm not a member of your association. I'm not a member of your association, so can you tell me what the offer of compensation is?
Okay.
That agent's going to say 3% or whatever they're saying. And say, okay, great. Can I get your email address so I can send you something that says we've had this conversation and that you're offering me that? Because again, it's great. I'm really glad you brought it up because the MLS is not an advertising vehicle. It's an offer of compensation. And that's why we get in so much trouble, not trouble, but we get in some squabbles with builders because the builders want, even though they've sold their model, they want to have that in the MLS open Sunday, 1 to 5 for, until they get out of that neighborhood. Well, that house isn't for sale anymore. So you can't put it in the MLS like that. And then they say, well, we'll put it over here on this proposed listing, and no, you can't do that because it's an offer of compensation. The rules and the regulations are very clear on that. And most builders, as Bob will tell you, they get a model and they find some investor to buy it or somebody who wants to move here in 2 years. And they'll buy the model and they'll rent it back to the builders for that amount of time. Well, that's not really actively, on the market, and therefore it can't be used as a way of advertising the open house online. But outside, right now, if you go over to the Valley or you go to Harrisonburg, you don't have to do that because the Valley MLS and the Harrisonburg MLS is part of ours. So those 3 associations are cooperating. But when you go north, the MRIS or east MRIS, you've got or Richmond, because Richmond will have listings that come out. You need to call and get the offer of compensation, approved. So same thing. You've got a listing here, and somebody calls you from Culpeper and says, I want to show your listing in Gordonsville. If they're from MRIS, and you should get, if they don't ask you, you should do them a favor of saying, hey, I'm sure you want to be paid. And they'll say, yeah. So we say, well, great, let's put something in writing that I'm offering you X% commission.
But you only have to do that at the point where your buyer actually.
No, before you show it
So
the
you
first
do it
time.
before you show it. Okay.
Now, another thing, again, off track but good, same thing with for sale by owner. Same thing with for sale by owner. You find a for sale by owner and you go to them and they say, hey, look, I've got a buyer who's interested in your property. Are you cooperating with agents? And they say, yeah, I'm paying a 3% commission to a buyer agent, blah, blah. You get that in writing. We've got a form. It's a one-time showing form that says, you're representing such and such. The seller understands that you don't represent them, but they are agreeing to pay compensation. You want to have that prior to showing the property.
Doesn't give me authorization to show them.
Right, plus giving authorization to show. And the reason being is some agents say, oh, well, I'm just gonna put it in the contract. Well, no, you don't put it in the contract because you're not a party, you're not a principal of that contract. You're not a buyer or seller, you're a party to the contract. So you write in, all good, seller agrees to pay 3% commission. Well, the buyer and seller can cross that thing out and initial it, and you're cooked because you're not a principal of that contract. They can literally cross out those terms, and they still have a ratified contract that's going to close in August at such and such a price. So you want to get that in front, that I'm going to bring you a willing and able buyer. If they should buy the property, you agree to pay me X%, and you get the representation worked out as well, that you represent the buyer, or you represent the seller only, whatever the case may be. All right?
And will that all be changed, not that part, but with the new MLS?
Yes. So the way it's going to change is we're going to switch sometime. Now it looks like it might be another year.
No.
They've had some delays. So it now may be another year, but we're going to change to, hey, good morning. We're going to change to Bright MLS, which is the old MRIS. And when we do that, we will be in cooperation north and east, but we won't be in cooperation with the Valley or Harrisburg anymore because they'll stay with Paragon, at least so far. Ultimately, the goal is that they would come together. So it would be the opposite. When you go to the Valley, you will now have to ask for compensation versus north or east. Yeah, well, ultimately,
That
it
would be the
probably
easiest
will.
way, right? Especially with Richmond.
Pretty soon you'll be able to show property in any state through a national MLS. And it's just a matter of who gets to it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, some people feel like Zillow already is.
Yeah, true, they are.
And then Realtor.com and are sort of fighting the battle to stay relevant in that situation. Property Owner Association Act, your property is either in or it's not in a property homeowner association. It's either is or is not in a condominium association. What you're putting in there is that if you know it is, then it's checked is, and if you know it's not, you're checking is not. If you don't know, find out. And interesting enough, can't think of any place in our market area. But there are some areas of the state where condominiums are located inside a homeowners association. So you have both. Reston is the example that I use. Reston is actually not a town or a city. It's a big homeowners association. And so they have clusters of townhomes and they have condos. So you have two different sets of documents that you have to get, which is pretty crazy.
There are no areas, like Wayland's Grant has 2 HOAs for the townhouses. There's the townhouse one, but then they're also part of the bigger one.
So that's good to know because, the buyer deserves to get both. And the sooner you get those to the buyer, the sooner you have another loophole for that buyer to get out of the transaction. But that's the important thing for when you're doing the listing and you're asking the seller, did you know that Wayland's Grant has 2 different scenarios, and this is where you're disclosing and getting that information. And some homeowner associations will let you get the information right away. Some homeowners associations, I think the link is like this. They don't want to give it to you until you have a contract. Is that right? Am I making that up? You can't order it. Okay. The sooner you order it, the better. Because when you get a contract, you can literally hand it to the agent at the same time that you're ratifying the contract, which means the buyer has 3 days. Once the buyer receives them, the buyer has 3 days to get out or not. And what you want to do as a listing agent is you want to make sure that everything you can is in the time period where they're doing a home inspection. So if the home inspection is 14 days, I want to have a homeowner association thing resolved. I want to make sure they've done their loan application. I want to make sure the earnest money's been deposited. Everything I can get in that, because at the end of the removal of the home inspection contingency, what you'd like to do is have everything ready to go now, except for probably the financing. Well, an appraisal, depending on how it's been written in the contract, because most times it's going to take longer than that. But again, purchaser may cancel the purchase. They're exactly the same in their terminology in regards to homeowner association or condominium. But purchaser may cancel the purchase agreement within 3 to 6 days, depending on the number, after receiving the condominium resale certificate or being notified that the condominium resale certificate will not be available. So 3 days if they get it directly, You can actually mail it to the purchasers if you have their address. You can actually mail it to their address and note when you mailed it, and 6 days later it terminates. I personally think that's a pretty cheesy thing to do. It's sort of a, I'll just mail it out there and, if the buyer's not home, it's not my problem, right? Because it says within 6 days.
That's the clock starts ticking when you put it in the mailbox.
That's right, yeah. And so the next day is number one. So if you put it in the mailbox today at noon, then it would be tomorrow's the first day and blah, blah, blah.
I typically have to send, if I have to mail it, I send it certified receipt. I don't know when they're receiving it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing to do,
That's what we all do.
but if I'm the listing agent and I'm getting those documents, I may be sending it certified, or even if I send it regular mail, I'm notifying the other agent.
Okay.
Hey, I put this in the mail as you asked me to, or whatever, because, you give the buyer agent, permission to come get them if they want to, or if you want me to deliver them to your office, whatever. The point being is don't just mail them and nobody know that you mail them. I mean, some agents will do that. They'll mail them and say, hey, they mark it down, and 6 days later and say, this agreement's now, that contingency is now gone. But I just don't think that's the professional way. And you're not going to have somebody very happy with you when wanting you to write contracts on their houses and your houses in the future. Number 11, a sewage system disclosure pursuant to section blah, blah. Owner must disclose the purchaser if the on-site sewage system serving the property fails to meet the Board of Health's current regulatory requirements. The owner has applied for or obtained a waiver from the Board of Health for the system. Disclosure is or not applicable to property. So basically what this is saying is, even though the word caveat emptor state, buyer beware, what this is saying is that you have a system that's not performing to meet the Board of Health, you have to disclose that.
How did you know this? Someone's telling you?
Well, again, the point being is when you're going through this, point being is going through this listing agreement, you're asking them.
That's exactly right.
And do you have any reason to believe that your septic field doesn't meet the Board of Health? If they shake your head, you're out of it. Because again, you're responsible for what you should, you're responsible for what you do know. You're not responsible from the agency law, you're not responsible for what you should have known or could have known. Only what you do know. So you can, if somebody said to you, you must have known it. No, I asked them the question. And they said, no, it's not a problem. And so I checked, it's not applicable to this property, right?
So are there any agents that just tell their sellers not to tell them anything?
Well, that's a great question. You could have this sort of Sergeant Schultz, Hogan's Heroes method of hear nothing, I see nothing, kind of thing. Say, look, I'm coming in your house. If you got any problems with the house, don't tell me. Because if you do, then I'm going to have to tell people. I'm guessing there probably are some people that are like that. I like it to be the opposite. Hey, let's talk about what is a problem and let's get it fixed before we put it on the market. Because there's a very good chance the home inspector is going to find it anyway, right? And they're going to ask for you to do it anyway. So let's get it done so that's not a question mark, right? I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the classic example of this is after the fact, you get a contract and the property's got radon. Seller says, I'm not remediating. Agent says, you gotta remediate, or when we put it back in the market, we're gonna disclose it anyway. But you got it, so let's go, we got a buyer who wants to buy this property, let's go ahead and get this taken care of, let's negotiate it and get it done. But, some can be defined and say, no, I'm not doing it, I'm gonna take it off the market, I'm gonna spend the $18 to remediate, and I'm gonna put it back in the market for $2,000 more, right? Well, the radon system is not gonna increase value. The only increased value is the market, right? And so, just because you put a brand new radon remediation system in doesn't mean that you're going to get an additional $2,000. But that's what would have to happen. You have to take it off the market, you fix it, and then put it back on the market. And here you've got a buyer who wants to buy the house.
Or they would have to take it off the market and not fix it and let's just move on.
Exactly. So that could happen too. Somebody say, look, I'm going to put it back on the market. And I say, well, if you do, I've got to disclose. Well, I don't want you to disclose. Well, I have to disclose. By the law, the agency says that. Well, then fine, I'm going to withdraw my listing with you and I'm going to go list with somebody who doesn't know. And I'm going to do this again. Maybe the next test will show that it's not.
Yeah, but you do have to disclose it if somebody asks you. or is it still?
No, well, yes, because it's a material defect. If somebody asked you, you had a buyer that was issued a property, is there anything wrong with his house? Well, it did have a problem right now. Confidentiality extends past agency, except for material defects. Those always have to be disclosed by law. Excuse me? No, right, yeah, no material defects.
But if you had a buyer who's okay with it and is willing, then.
The only problem you have with that is the
Right, but that
buyer
can
may
still
be-
go forward without them taking it off the market.
Except
and
the buyer may be willing, but the lender may not be. The lender might require that it be remediated, especially if it's a government loan. FHA, VA, good chance they're gonna say, oh, no way. You get there remediated, we're gonna test it again before. So, yeah.
So I'm back to number 11, because I don't have tons of experience with septic. You're not disclosing that you're on septic.
That's in the contract.
That's in your listing, whatever your document.
Right.
You're disclosing that you know or don't know whether it's met the health department requirements. And how would a homeowner know that?
They get a note, they get something like,
Do they get
it happens in the city from time to time. You know, these old septic fields that they'll say, this is not up to the standard of, and you need to bring it.
So if you live on 2 acres, are you gonna get, the health department gonna come by every year to check your septic system?
And that's what I'm saying. Do you have any reason to believe that you're not? No, I don't, because nobody's ever notified me that I have a
I
problem.
mean, you get it when you put it in,
Right.
like as part of the building process, you do deal with the health department. I have done that, but I've never, I don't ever remember dealing with the health department after that.
No, and quite honestly, that's the reason why when you, in the contract, when it says that you're gonna get something from the government authority saying that the septic field is, as best as they can tell, is in working order, as a buyer agent, you should be adding into that to include the inspection of the distribution box and verification that it's been pumped on a regular basis, because nobody knows, right? So the government official walks across that septic field and says, yeah, it's not too mushy, it seems to be working okay. But what you really want to do is you want to dig a square around that distribution box and see that it's, you know, because what I've seen on a number of occasions is they open it, everything's been fine, but when they open it up, that distribution box was about to just collapse. It was, you know, on its last legs, working, but it was on its last legs. Go ahead.
I've run into some objection by the seller on that, because they're concerned that depending on the age of it, that you're doing more harm than good. And I've had one particular instance where the seller said, no way, I'm not doing it, period. And sorry, you can take care of all of this, I'm giving you the proof that the septic tank has been maintained and pumped. If you want to go ahead and mess with the distribution box, you can do that.
And then that becomes a decision for the buyer.
Right.
Do I want to buy this house without seeing it?
Yeah.
And, but the seller absolutely has the right to say, can't do it. That's why you put it in the contract. And the seller has the right to cross it out. And the buyer has the right to say, well, if I can't look at the distribution box, I'm not going to buy your property, because I'm not going to.
And would a home inspection typically address any of that?
No.
So really, the septic are,
It's a separate inspection.
It's a separate inspection.
You got to go to, if you're going to, outside the government, you ask the government, the county to come out, and they're
would they
health
do that?
people. Oh, yeah, they come out and do the, you know, I forget what it costs the seller, but they'll do basically a sniff test, is what they
See if
do.
there's any real green grass.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So that's basically what they do, and say, yeah, as best we can tell, this is in working order. Or you get somebody like Cavalier Well and Septic to go out and do a full inspection. You can also ask that the property be pumped prior to closing and provide written verification that it's been done. You can do all those things. The seller doesn't agree to it, right? But the seller doesn't agree to it, the buyer has the right to say, okay, well, I'm going to move on and do something else.
And so that would be part of something.
No, that's right.
That would be part of the well and septic.
Yep. So in other
Not
terms,
the home inspection.
no.
Okay.
The home inspector doesn't look at the well and septic at all.
Okay, but it wouldn't be under other inspections during a home inspection.
It could be. I mean, your paragraph in the contract is well and septic, but you could say, we're gonna do the well and septic, we're gonna have those people there at the same time we're doing the home inspection. If you can do that, you are a magician. You know, especially with, I mean, you know, Dan Conquest raves about Cavalier Well and Septic, but he says they're really hard to get a hold of. But once they're there, they do a great job. They're just, they're just not.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Foothill Irrigation. They're great people, but man, just trying to get them to do the black backflow test so I don't get the third miserable letter from the county is like, pulling teeth. But they're really good people and they do a great job once they're there.
But you believe that there's in other terms in the contract? I think that's the question.
Other
terms,
yeah.
yes. But I have to say arbitrarily, I just put it in the contract, because otherwise we always have to let the seller come back and say, hey, here's the documents of this documentation, let's not let it right.
And that's one of the nice things about transaction does too, is you learn that, is that you can have these clauses saved. And then you just copy and paste them right into other terms. You've got boom, 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 these things that you're going to include in each of your, and then basically what you're doing is the seller authorizes as part of the well and septic inspection, the company to examine the distribution box and any other septic equipment, and purchaser agrees to put the property back in the same condition that they found it. Because that's the big thing. You're cutting out a square. And every so often, the seller comes home and the sod is over to the side and nobody's done anything to repair it and put it back in the.
And the purchaser would think that.
I can ask.
Yeah, again, you can ask. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Many of the Property Disclosure Act, and again, all these things in the listing agreement are also in the contract, right? But the nice thing about this, hopefully you see this as we've gone through this, when the person has decided that they want to list with you, it's a good thing to walk you through because it's giving you the opportunity to make sure they understand the things that they're going to be responsible for. And one of the things they're going to be responsible for is signing the Disclosure Act, which if they're not making any representations, property being sold and as is with all defects that may exist, if any, except as otherwise provided in the purchase contract. Failure to make such disclosure in a timely manner or misrepresentation contained in disclosure may result in termination of the purchase contract or award or damages to the purchaser. Broker will furnish owner with the appropriate disclosure. Well, all this is talking about is it talks about Chesapeake Bay, it talks about floodplain, just different things that they have to disclose about the property. The most interesting thing about this, and again, if you remember what I talked about, reading this and then having a way of talking about it in your own terms or in your own words, here's a great place of this. So Michael, what does this mean? All right, what this means is that there's a form and you're going to talk about, there's a form that talks about Chesapeake Bay and streams and then there's, is it noted in a floodplain, but you're not making any representation disclosure. The most important thing is here that most agents don't know is the disclosure is not part of the contract. In other words, it doesn't mean, if you've got everything else signed, but you don't have disclosure signed, you have a ratified contract. And when you deliver it to the other party, you have an enforceable contract. But if this doesn't get signed, either the buyer or the seller can terminate the contract.
Even up to closing.
Even up to closing. So it's so important to have this as a listing. I don't know how you guys do it, but as a listing agent, I would have this at the house, or I'd have this in the attachments on the MLS. So an agent can pull that up. It's signed by your seller. They can pull it up, get their buyer to sign it, because it's a really interesting thing that a lot of agents don't know. Is it doesn't have anything to do with ratification, but it can have everything to do with termination. Well, I never got that disclosure. So as an example, buyer gets cold feet. They remove the home inspection, they remove that homeowners association, they remove their financing contingency, everything has been removed, there's no way out. But they get cold feet, something happens. They go to an attorney. Attorney asks, did you sign the Virginia Residential Property Disclosure Act? What's that? It looks like this. I don't think I signed that. Great. Because we're going to terminate it based on the fact that we never got that. So it's really important. Right there at the very bottom, it says, contains disclosure may result in termination of the purchase contract or an award of damages to the purchaser. Broker will furnish owner with appropriate disclosure form for completion by owner. You all well give that? Understand what we're talking about? Okay. Other offers, owner does or does not authorize broker. This is really important. The owner can do whatever they want. They can tell you to do whatever you want, but you don't do anything without them telling you what they want. That's what this paragraph is talking about. They allow you or they don't allow you to use broker's best judgment in determining how and when to divulge the existence of an offer or office on the property of which broker is aware to other brokers or purchasers, if asked, period. What that's saying, if you've taken my classes in regards to multiple offers and things, the best thing for the seller is for people to know there's other interest. Because it could very well bring in another contract, it could bring another contract in at a higher price, it could bring in another contract that doesn't have arduous terms that another contract has. But the point being is you've got to have written permission from the seller to do that. So in this situation, there does allow you to use your best judgment. And in our company, in the way we train, your best judgment is, if I know something else is coming in, I'm going to go back and tell this other company agent, hey, you've written me an offer. We're going to look at it at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock tonight. But I'm pretty sure another offer's coming in. I just want you to know in case you want to go back to your buyer to change it anyway. I will certainly let you know if it doesn't come in, but I just want to give you that information, right? You can even say you have an offer, a house on the market for $400,000, and you've got an offer that's $390. The seller can give you permission to go to the other party and say, we've already got an offer at $390. If you can beat that, you've got a chance. Is that unfair to the first party? Yes, because they made an offer. But if the seller gives you permission to do that, you can go to the second buyer. Now, what I would do instead is say, I know you offered us $390. We've got another offer coming in. I want you to make sure you put your best foot forward, because we're going to tell the other party that we've got another offer already. So you're giving everybody the same information. That's the key to it. And what I call this is the multiple contract or other offers. I call it the reply all technique. And reply all means I've got 3 agents that have written offers. I'm going to put them all in the same email string. And every time I say we're going to look at contracts at 5 o'clock tonight, all 3 of them are getting it at the same time. Snake in the backyard scared the dog ran off, couldn't find the dog, so we didn't look at him at 5, we're now going to look at him at 7. Reply all. Sorry, just so you know, we didn't do it at 5 because there was a snake in the backyard and scared the dog. The dog ran away. It took us 2 hours to find the dog. The point being is all 3 people still are in the loop. If all 3 people aren't in the loop, somebody's going to start thinking somebody's doing something shaky. They must have their own offer. They must have an agent in their own company trying to buy it, whatever. Now, you're not replying all to the terms, you're just replying all to the things that are happening. So as an example, again, 3 offers, they're all decent offers. Let's just use, step 1. You say, hey, these offers are all too close. We don't know what to do. We're going to give you till noon tomorrow to bring us your best and final offer. That's a reply all. Hey, thanks so much for your offer. Really well written. They're all too close. We want you to bring your best and final by noon tomorrow. So everybody's on the same page, right? Or you counter all 3 of them to different prices or whatever, terms, whatever, and you say, we're countering these. Sarah, your buyer's in the primary. Catherine, your buyer's in backup. Bob, your buyer's in the first backup. Everybody knows we need these responded to by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Everybody knows that's what the case is. You're not telling what the terms are, we're just saying, and you don't even say who's in what position. You can reply all back and say, you're going to get a counter from us, and you'll have till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And when they get the counter, they'll know whether they're a backup or first backup or primary. Because if you got multiple offers, you want to line those airplanes up on the runway. You don't want to give them all 3 counters and have everybody agree to it, and then all of a sudden you sold the house to 3 people. That's not what you want to have.
And an agent cannot contact you and say, okay, what's going to move me to first position?
Well, they can, but if the seller has initialed off on a contract and made them primary. So we've initialed off on Sears and we've bumped the price up $20,000, right? And you come to me and say, hey, I'm in the first backup. What do I have to do to get the primary? The answer is you got to hope they don't sign our counter. Because if they sign the counter in their primary, it's done. Even if you come in $30,000 more, if they sign the counter that we gave them, then they're still primary. So you're
But can you tell me you gotta come in $30,000 higher?
no, because you're still backup.
Right.
Even if you come in $30,000 higher and you're $10,000 ahead of Sarah now, she was put in a primary position, and if her buyer signs off on it, that's ratified primary. You have to.
Her client has to make a decision first.
That's right. But what you're doing is you're countering all three, and they all have to be responded to at the same time. So at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning or 5 o'clock this afternoon.
So if she
Everybody.
doesn't get back to you till 11 o'clock and I get back to you by 10
So,
and I've got a better,
so what would happen in that situation? Let's say it's after 5 o'clock. Haven't heard from Sarah. You come in $30,000 more. I can come to Sarah and say, Sarah, I didn't get a response from you. Did your people sign off on the contract? No, snake was in the backyard, the dog ran off. I just haven't been able to give them.
okay,
I can, as much as I hate to do it, I can say to Sarah, we're withdrawing our offer. We're withdrawing the offer. We haven't heard from you. You didn't initial offer. We said you had to apply for withdrawing offer, and then I can put you in the primary position.
but you have to put that in writing, that if I don't hear from you in this order, then this is, like, do you have to specifically tell them, this is what is gonna happen? If I don't hear from Sarah, then I'm going to Catherine. If I don't hear from Catherine, then I'm going on.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear from everybody.
Okay.
Almost very rarely do you not. Very rarely is a snake in the backyard and not goes off.
Okay.
If Sarah knows where people have to respond by 5, she's going to make sure they respond by 5. So but if they don't, the key to it is I'm calling Sarah and I'm asking it this way. This is really important. I'm not saying if I don't hear from you, but I don't have a ratified contract because she didn't initial off on it.
Right.
Right, so that contract, when I teach contracts, I explain to people, every counter is a rejection of the last offer,
Right.
right? So we're rejecting Sarah's offer and we're saying she has to give us $20,000 more. So now it's in their ballpark. All they have to do is initial that, and now we have a ratified contract. But at 5 o'clock, which is the time I gave her, I call her up, and you say it exactly this way, Sarah, have your people had an opportunity to initial off on the counter yet? If she says no, then I notify her. I don't say, hey, you're no longer in primary backup. Because Sarah goes, oh, wait, I got an initial. When she doesn't, she's going to scramble over and get an initial and send no, right? So the key is, do you have it initialed yet? And they say, no, it'll probably be about 7. And then unfortunately, I have to say, well, I got bad news for you, I'm withdrawing you. She told me there are no initials.
Okay.
So now I'm withdrawing the offer. Now I'm going to send an email to her saying, per our conversation, your contract has been made null and void due to the fact it wasn't responded to by 5 p.m. Follow me? But the whole point of that all along is the reply all is so important because all the agents are going to feel like they're being communicated properly. There's so many agents out there that do such a crummy job of communication. I'm just dumbfounded by how many agents, I can't get a hold of my agent. I can't find out if this has happened yet. I can't, it's unbelievable that they can still have people want to do business with them. Because it's just their mode of operandi. And it's always, oh, I'm just so busy, I'm so contract. And I'm like, come on, I wouldn't be half as busy if I wasn't trying to chase you for an answer, kind of thing. Anyway, so does or does not authorize, when to divulge, owner shall inform broker if owner is unwilling to permit broker to divulge existence of any particular office on the property. Broker's licensee shall not disclose to prospective purchasers or their licensees the terms of any other offers to purchase the property received by broker without owner's prior written consent. So an example of that, until it goes to public record, it becomes sold and in the tax records. You can't go marketing that their house sold for $795 when it was listed at $800. You can't go out and put a postcard. Just sold this house in the neighborhood for 100 contract, $795, because it's not closed yet, and you didn't get permission from that owner to put it out there. And the reason being is that contract could fall apart. Now, they got listed 800, they got 795, they're probably okay with people knowing that they got 795, so if anybody else was going to write on it, they know that's kind of the benchmark. But the point being is prior written consent.
Michael?
Yeah.
The terminology, existence of any particular offers, what actually does that?
So what you've got there, depending on who you talk to, what it means is you're in the gray when you're in that place. And the reason being is It didn't say particular, did it? Oh, yeah. Owner shall inform broker if owner is unwilling to permit to divulge the existence of any particular offers. Remember this, that an offer does not have to be in writing. So it could be that you've got a verbal, hey, an offer's coming in and it's gonna be at this price. Or it could be that you have an email that says, would your buyer, seller be willing to agree to such and such? Now here's the key to it. The offer doesn't have to be in writing, but for it to be enforceable, it does, okay? So you can do a verbal offer and think that you've got a deal. You don't have a deal until it's written, ratified, and delivered back to the other party. And where you get in trouble with this, going back to what we just talked about, Sarah goes, wait a minute, we had a deal. A lot of people are willing to accept the counter at $20,000. Your people told us they'd sell it to us for that. Yeah, we did, if we were free by 5 o'clock. And we waited till 5 o'clock as per the agreement. But at 6:30 or 7, we don't have a deal anymore. And therefore, I can withdraw that offer and go to something else, get it in writing, and deliver it back to the other person, which you have ratification, which means both buyers and sellers have agreed to all terms. And then you have what's called delivery, between buyer and sellers have agreed to all terms, therefore it's ratified. And now I've gotten it back to Ned. And Ned's people have it, and therefore it's now delivered, which now means it's enforceable. Until you have those three things together, that's still open for something else to happen.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
ratified, so I'm in the process of almost complete. The only thing we're getting, needing is the deposit and then the buyer side to sign off that the deposit's been given. But otherwise, this is all been signed. By the
And you're
seller.
ratified, the deposit has nothing to do with ratification.
Okay, good.
Because you've got agreement that everybody knows the deposit's
I
coming.
mean, yeah, okay.
Deposit
So
doesn't
this
mean
page,
It just,
signed,
the
and not the
deposit,
next page,
not getting the deposit would mean you're in default, but it doesn't mean it's not ratified.
the page 6 of 6 means, this is, sorry. See, that was a purchase agreement, but
The seller and buyer signature page, not the.
the agent's page,
Right.
okay.
Is it okay as a real estate agent to make it use kind of business practice, not to accept verbal offers?
You have to present any offer to your seller by law. You can't say, we're not taking them, unless the seller says, I don't want them. I don't want you to tell me anything unless it's in writing. You would go back to Catherine or whoever and say, hey, I appreciate you saying you want me to present this, but my seller has told me nothing in writing. Now, if I'm you, I may have just said that, but I'm going to say to you, I just got somebody who said they're willing to offer X. But that doesn't mean they have to respond to it.
But I've heard this many times, verbal offer.
Right, I would think that you would tell me,
Offer, and I'm saying,
you have to put it in writing before I tell my client, because
that's.
they're not gonna hang their hat on your
I did this once,
verbal offer.
right,
Right,
this once, and they were like, oh, sorry.
Right.
I didn't.
Well, the problem with the verbal offer is that somebody, again, they're not enforceable. That's the main problem. But the other problem is, I said, would your seller accept 300,000? And you go to your buyer, your seller, and the seller says, or vice versa, it could be the other way. So the seller says to people, you write it up, I'll accept 300. And it comes in at 300, and all of a sudden there's some more interest. And the buyer and seller goes, maybe 300,000 will go up. So I'm gonna make it 320. And now the buyer and the buyer agent go, wait a minute. You said you would accept our 300. Yeah, I did. I said I would accept 300, but it wasn't in writing. And now other things have happened. And that's why, anytime you come to my office and we're talking about things, I will say, first thing I'll say is who do you represent? So I know which side of the ledger I'm on. And then I'll say, do we have it in writing? No, we've just been going back and like on counters. No, we're just going back and forth with counters so that we don't get it in writing. And you want to get it in writing for a couple of different reasons. One is that unless it's in writing and delivered, it's not enforceable. But the other reason you want to do it is because you can be going back and forth verbally, and then all of a sudden another contract comes in, right? And then that seller has every right to listen to the other offer. And then the third reason is, let's see, tell me what.
Risk management.
Right, no, but that's not what I'm going to say. The third reason is you're going verbal back and forth, another offer comes in. Oh, if I present this to Sarah and Sarah, all your seller has to do is initial right here, and we got a deal. there's a much better chance I can get them an initial now versus it's just verbal. Well, I got nothing yet. But if it's sitting right in front of me, yeah, I wanted to get 315, but it's only 312.5. But if I initial off on it, it's the settlement date I want, and it's clean, and the people are paying cash and whatever. So a lot easier for me to initial off that $2,500 difference than if I'm still just mamby-pambying around on the verbal because I got nothing. It's right here. All you got. So from you as an agent, it's a much easier way of getting somebody to sign it. And that's what I try to communicate to somebody and say, look, it's much better for you to get it to me in writing because then I can go present it to my client. And if they're good with it, they can just sign it when it's done. Whereas if I go verbally, then I gotta go back to you, and then you gotta put it in writing, and then who knows, something may have changed by then.
I can tell you from my standpoint, there was, the price is only one issue. They have all the
The
terms.
terms, yeah,
They have all the
too.
terms that go with it, that never come along with the verbal offer.
Right.
Once you get, so, I can tell you, as a builder, you never want to deal with it because you spend a lot of time on stuff that never goes anywhere. And then you finally see it and you go, God, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and oh, by the way, at 412.5, I want the deck, and I want the finished
Yeah.
basement,
And
and
I'm
I
not
want
closing for a year.
the wet bar, and yeah, that's right.
Right, 2%
But,
interest.
but you do have to, you do, I think practice would be, you negotiate in verbal, right?
Right, that's what I was gonna say, I mean, your credibility is online too, at least that's what's been my experience. I mean, you kind of want to present that, my word is better than anything written in a contract, and if I have going back and forth with another agent, and we kind of said, was your client, yes, and then you're scrambling to get the contract, but, because I had a client that like squirrely, after we'd gone through all this, and I said, well, do you really want to, we've been working on this for like a month, do you want to go back, and change it now?
So here's the issue though. The way I would respond to that, my objection handling technique, in the way that I handle this, Ned, no doubt I trust you. No reason you've ever given me any reason to not believe that we shake hands on this, we're good to go. But if it's just you and me, Ned,
That's not a problem.
I'm all good.
Client.
But when Bob Hauser brings an offer,
Oh, yeah.
written offer to me, for my seller, I have to give that to the seller. So it's just you and me, and we're in control of it, we're all good.
Yeah.
But while it's verbal, well, somebody else, a fly flies into the ointment. There's nothing I can do about that now. I'm gonna have to come back to you and say, I'm so sorry. And you're gonna say to me, but we had, and I said, yeah, I know we had, but we now have this. And this, and now, some sellers, and unfortunately, I believe that it's fewer than it used to be. There's some sellers that said, no, my word's my word. I said we're gonna do this. And so we're working with these people. If it doesn't work out, we'll deal with Bob. But in most situations, the seller goes, $10,000 more, I'm sorry, Dad.
Yeah.
And I can say that, you can be mad at me all day long. My classic example of this has to do with this, but it's the same kind of thing. One of our agents had a listing. Agent from another company brought us an offer. Seller accepted it, right? So we got a ratified contract. It's like a Tuesday. Seller still wants it held open on Sunday because they want to keep the pressure on that buyer agent and the buyer because it was an active market. Whenever I still want you've got an ad in the paper, I still want you to hold it. So the seller said we want to do it. So my agent comes to me and said, yeah, you got to do it. You'd have thought that I had killed this other agent's firstborn. This guy came on me like an 18-wheeler. How dare you market this product? The only reason you're doing it is to try to attract more buyers, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I knew this guy, right? And I knew he, had a little bit of a hot head, but I'd never had an issue with it. But man, he went up one side and down the other. And I said, look, I'm so sorry. This is what the seller wants. We're doing it. So I go to our agent, I explain the situation. The agent goes back to the seller and says, look, I don't want to screw up the deal. I don't want this guy so mad that he screws up the deal. So don't hold it open. So then I get to call the guy back and say, by the way, we're not going to hold open. To this day, the guy has not spoken to me.
Oh, my God.
And it's been about 3 years. And I still believe he thinks the only reason we didn't hold it open was because he yelled at me and that I was doing something wrong. And that he got his pound of flesh. And to this day, I'll see him, hey, how you doing? But the point being is, I got to do what the seller wants us to do. And in this situation, the son was out, and all hold open, but then when the guy was, he splices it to the agent, tell him this guy's really mad, and he'll just give you, all the information so you can make whatever decision. He said, let's pull the open. So we did, because he told us to, and this guy now thinks because he screamed at me, all what I really want to do is just not do anything, we're just gonna do this. But the point being is, going back to this, Ned could be upset with me because we had something verbal, but my seller wanted something different. And if it's not in writing and delivered, there's nothing I can do.
So did you ever, so in that case, was it a ratified contract?
Oh, yeah.
So, do you have to disclose in the open house that it's under contract?
No, if somebody comes in, they ask, I say, well, we do have an offer, but we're happy if you're interested in making an offer, we're happy to provide it, but it would be a backup situation.
But you don't have to disclose.
You don't have to disclose it coming through the door, no.
Most people are gonna know though, because if you change the status.
Right.
They're not gonna know anyway.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
He bullied you.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That
And, he bullied me, but I let myself be bullied because it was for my client, right? It was for our client. If it wasn't for our client, I would have handled it very differently. But I just said to him, here's the deal. You make the decision what you want to do.
Like you're still in negotiation, then you could have.
I mean,
But
it wasn't
you
even,
have that by contract,
it wasn't
so
even
why was
negotiation.
Why was he so?
Because he wanted, because it was active, he would have liked to have back offer, keep the pressure on the other offer. If we could have told him another offer's come in,
Right.
when they did the
But
home.
why was the agent who had the ratified contract, so, you have a ratified contract unless you do something to screw it up.
Because he thought, it wasn't even about him. It was about the fact he thought we were trying to just use it to get other buyers, which if
But
we
if you
wanted to,
were,
we could.
then, but he's still primary.
And that's the exact point. If it wasn't for my client, I would have handled it very differently. But it was all about, how do you want us to do this? This is your buyer agent. We want to get this to closing.
We're
I
going
can-
to names on the front page of that listing.
Yeah, I can get, I can get in a, lack of a better term, tete-a-tete with somebody, but it's not going to do anybody any good. My job is to make sure the seller or the buyer, depending on the client is, we make sure that their situation is resolved. And for me to get in a big argument with this guy was just not, gonna, it is wasn't gonna be a good thing, so. All right, indemnification. Owner acknowledges and agrees in consideration the use of services and facilities of the broker. The MLS identified in paragraph 7, neither broker, its officers, directors, employees, nor any real estate broker or salesperson employed by or affiliated with broker showing the property to purchase or prospective purchasers, nor the MLS, nor the direction, blah, blah. Basically, what this is saying is we're not responsible if there's vandalism, theft, damage, unless we're responsible. Okay? That's the key. What this is saying to you all is the seller needs to understand that we're not responsible for if something happens to their house while it's on the market, unless if you go down near the end of the paragraph where it says arising out of the negligence of the broker, its officers, directors, employees. So when the seller says, well, wait a minute, what does this mean? What it means is if something happens to your house, we're not responsible unless somebody was negligent. Yes, I'm responsible for looking to see who was in the property last, and if somebody left, inadvertently left the back door open and somebody got in, or they left it wide open and a deer went through, and we can substantiate that happened, then that broker could be held responsible for the damages of that, or the dog coming through after being chased by the snake. But the point being is, unless there's negligence, what this paragraph says is that the owner can't hold responsible. Bevan had a situation where some jewelry went missing.
Ooh, that's right. Big time.
And so the owner, rightfully so, called Bevan. Bevan called me. I said, read the lockbox. She read the lockbox. She went back to the agent that had been in the property, and she said, oh, no, blah, blah. It turned out 10-year-old kid had taken, innocently, and came to dinner that night with the jewelry on, right?
Want to watch?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
But it came to dinner, right? The
Right.
10-year-old, because the agent called the buyers and said, no, blah, blah. And then sure enough, at dinner that night, the kid shows up with the jewelry on. And the mom goes, wait a minute, where did you get that? Oh, I was in my house the other day. It was,
My 10-year-old.
Yeah.
So-
It was the house next door too. They did it in the house, another, what could I say, They did it to a second home right next
Oh, the
door.
kid took stuff in the
Same
second
kid?
house? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't
he
know
didn't
that.
represent, I didn't represent.
Right.
But he yelled, klepto. So this agent agreed.
Hello, klepto.
I was gonna say, that's not fucking good.
But so the realtor who felt so bad.
Doesn't matter.
It mattered.
I remember.
She'd been working with this buyer for a year, looking at houses all over the county, so seriously, could have been staff.
Anyway, the point being is that if the stuff hadn't been returned, that agent or their prospect client would have been held liable for the theft and whatever, because there was negligence there. But it got resolved.
The negligence being the kid running around unattended.
Yeah.
And so these people wanted to cause action, I'll say it wasn't quite so innocent. It's a cause action through the listing agent broker,
It'd be through the police at that point.
but, so I got. you.
My client would listen.
The clients would file a
But
report with the
let's
police.
say it was the open door, left the door open, the deer went in and created damage. This is the listing, and it was the buyer's agent who opened the door.
And the seller would come to us. We would look at lockboxes, say, this last people through, we would go back, and it would be the buyer agent's negligence that would be liable.
So if they wanted to pursue someone legally, that they wouldn't have to go through the listing agent.
They go through the listing agent for the information as to who.
And not-
Right. But as long as we could substantiate that it wasn't out of our negligence, it would be the other. And that's why it talks about nor the MLS, nor the director's blah, blah. It's not just our company, it's, yeah, go ahead.
So that's similar to the situation that I had was in Charles, you know what? We had, one showing agent leaving the key in the door, leaving the door unlocked after they left. And then we had an.
You had a video of it?
No.
Oh.
They did not.
Okay.
And then we had another situation with an open house, one of the back doors was left open after the open house, so that particular client was
Oh,
not
yeah,
there.
that was not a good one. Yeah.
So it was the seller was,
Oh, they should live it. Oh, my God.
Okay, we're not gonna get through today,
Close
that's
the
okay.
door. Make sure the keys in the lockbox.
yeah.
We will get to recordings within the property next week. But letter B, if owner has provided a broker relevant information about the property, owner represents and warrants that to the best of owner's knowledge and belief such information on the, or the information contained in the disclosure form complete in compliance with the Virginia Residential Property Association Act is true and correct as of the given date. So that goes back to what we were talking about before. You've asked the question, they said, no, I got no problem. Roof ever leaked? No. Roof's never leaked. Basement's never leaked? No. Basement's never leaked. Floodplain? No, no floodplain. They've given you that information, and what this is saying is, to the best of owner's knowledge and belief, such information contained in the disclosure form is true and correct as of a given date. The owner will update such information promptly in the event of a material change in such information. The parties agree that such information is incorporated into and constitutes part of this agreement. The important part of this is only as it relates to the Property Disclosure Act. If they have water in their basement the next week, they do not have to tell you that, because we're a caveat outdoor state. Disclosure has nothing to do with water in the basement or a leaky roof. It only has to do with the items that are in the disclosure, i.e. the health code thing, i.e. they get notification that they're now in a floodplain, i.e. that the runoff is now part of the Chesapeake Bay, blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with things that are wrong with the property. You understand what I'm saying in that? It's very clear in this paragraph, they're talking about the Virginia Residential Property Disclosure Act. Just when you get a chance, pull that up and read it. You'll see it's very generic. First it says, I'm not warranting anything. And then it's very generic, floodplain, Chesapeake Bay. I don't think Megan's Law's in that. That's in the contract in regards to sex offenders. But I don't think that's in the Disclosure Act, because that's the responsibility of the buyer to find out that information. So anyway, questions?
Go back to the last time I was in here, we talked about the water in the crawl space.
Okay,
If I see it at the agent, I have to disclose it.
correct.
So
Correct. If you see it, then you've got water in the crossing. Now,
even though that's not covered by the Disclosure Act.
so no, two different things. Okay, Disclosure Act is in regards to what the seller has to disclose. Anything else is caveat emptor. However, the kind of twist on that, you only have to disclose the water in the crawl space if it goes away.
Okay,
Because the water in the crawl space is visible.
then it becomes a hidden defect.
Exactly, but if you know it gets water at a certain time, but like we've had until yesterday, no rain, and so the crawl space is now dry, you would have to just, even though it's dry, you would have to say, hey, at certain times, this crawl space does get water in it. That's the difference.
But the seller doesn't have to disclose that.
No, that's right. And now here's the other, interesting caveat. The seller only has to, it doesn't have to disclose anything other than it's in the Property Disclosure Act. Hidden adverse material defects to the property, we as an agent have to disclose because we're held to a higher standard. Within the four corners of the property, right? So if you know that, John Water Parkway is gonna go through your backyard, through Belvedere, which is not, so but there was some discussion about that at one point. But anyway, if you knew that, you don't have to disclose that because it's not within the four corners of the property. That would be up to the buyer agent and the buyer. But, pardon the pun, a gray area, going back to the crawl space, if it's got water in the crawl space, I don't have to disclose that because they can see it, right? But a gray aspect of that would be polybutylene pipe, Quest piping. It's gray, that's the pun. But the point being is, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, some attorneys would agree with me, some attorneys would not. That's not a hidden defect because they can see it. They can open up the underneath the sink and see the piping. They go in the basement, they can see the piping. That's up to them, in my opinion. That's why you have home inspection and whatever. Now, if you know that the Quest piping has had a couple issues, now that does become a hidden adverse material effect, because a couple of the joints have sprung leaks, right? And so in that situation, you have to disclose, but if it's worked properly and they've never had an issue, I don't believe you have to disclose that because it's visible. It's part of the property the way it was built. The other one would be fake stucco.
Right.
Yeah, there were issues with gravel, moisture getting back behind it, blah, blah. If the house has never had a problem with it, you don't disclose it because they're walking up and the house is built that way. They never had a problem. But if there have been places where moisture's got behind them and it's whatever, and it hasn't been, taken care of, that's a disclosure issue. That makes sense?
It does, although it runs the risk of, I came out of my lessons, the classes, don't be an expert in things you're not an expert in. So,
Exactly right.
Going through a house and looking at the piping and trying to determine whether that's a problem feels like that's well outside of most realtors' expertise.
And I think what you just did is you agreed with what I just said. The piping's there.
Yeah.
So best I know, it's worked fine. I'm not going to go around and try to figure out if there's a loose joint someplace because I got, as I joke about all the time, I got a pen, a checkbook, and a phone in my toolbox. That's all I know. If that's wrong, okay, I'm going to call somebody, they're going to fix it, I'm going to pay them to fix it, right? And I'm only responsible for what I do know. So if nobody's told me that Quest piping has been faulty, then I'm assuming that it's fine, right? If nobody's told me that X, then I'm assuming that it's fine. But if I know that crawl space is dry right now, but that's not looking for something. I just know I was here one day and it was wet, and now it hasn't rained for a couple of weeks. I look, it's not wet, and it doesn't rain, and somebody looks at the property, does their home inspection, and all of a sudden there's water in the crawl space after home inspection. I would be held responsible for that because I did know that at one point that crawl space does get wet.
Goes back to the asking to sell it, does your calls, if you see any little remnants in the place,
So-
you say to yourself,
It's a great way to end.
any water issues?
Great way to end. I just think the more I know, the better. I'd rather know and then resolve it. So if it's me, I'm just telling you me. I go through a property if I was listing, which I don't, but I go through a property with a legal pad, and I go through every room. And I know, and we just talk about whatever. We go to the basement, and I say, have you ever had a problem with the basement? Has it ever been wet? Because I want to know now. And they say, well, yeah, like use my daughter and son-in-law. They moved in their house and it flooded the next day. You know, they had like, I forget what it was, 6 inches of rain in 12 hours or whatever, and a hydrostatic pressure, and the water came up wherever there was so they got it fixed. Real good sump pump, did whatever, and they waited a year and it has not done, so now they just finished finishing. It got finished this past weekend, right? But they waited a year to make sure. No, and got a, you know, radon remediation system in it now, and it's got this sump pump, and it's worked great. So in that situation, I go to list that house. Have you ever had water in the basement? And Ben and Beck would say, yeah, back in May of 2017, 6 inches rain, hydrostatic pressure. But because my dad is so smart and everything, he wants to get a sump pump and got it done. And then, well, that's not a defect anymore because it was fixed. And I can prove that they've had no issues with it. Or they can substantiate to me that I did this and we haven't had any issues since. Now it's not a defect anymore because it was resolved. Now, if the buyer says, as far as the walkthrough at home inspection, hey, I see this is a fairly new sump pump drain, and did they have a problem? Yes. And here's how it was fixed, and here's the person that you can call. But the bottom line is it's fixed, and they haven't had any issues, so it's no longer a hidden defect.
So I just need to belabor it just for a second. Let's go back to the crawl space. The water's in the crawl space, so in your definition, it's a hidden defect because it dries up. Your prior recommendation was write it up on a note card and stick it on the crawl space door. Does the seller?
Wait, that's my second. My first is to fix it. Is to fix the drainage so that the water doesn't go in there anymore. But if you're not going to fix it and the crawl space is in a place that I'm not going to worry about it, whatever, then I'm going to have something that says, you know, discloses that does happen from time to time.
So, yeah, and I'm primarily just looking at this as agent.
Right.
I can disclose it on a note card, try to make people aware of it. Does the seller have to put it on his disclosure form?
Doesn't have a disclosure form. Disclosure form has nothing to do with crawl space. That's the whole point. When you look at that disclosure form, it has nothing to do with the condition of the property.
So the form that we just talked about earlier, which is not part of the contract, but what we recommended we have as a listing agent have ready, signed, attached to the MLS, does not cover any of that.
Right, it's just boilerplate.
General.
Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
So
I think the owner's going to get it.
So there's really no obligation, because of the caveat answer, there's no obligation on the seller's part to disclose a hidden defect.
And what's really interesting, Bob, is years ago, there used to be a disclosure, and then there was a disclaimer. And disclosure did have information that these were issues. No attorney would let their seller sign that because they didn't have to because of the caveat up their state. Because you could say you don't have basement problems, and you never did. But a week afterwards, it leaks, and you signed something that said it didn't. The attorneys would say that a buyer could say, you do this, blah, blah, blah. So what they did is they created this new form, which I call the disclosure AIMA. Thank you so much. Yeah, oh, it is. So I call it the disclosure AIMA. And what it did is it took everything in there, but it took out the things that you're saying. Very first paragraph, condition. Owners of the residential real property make no representations or warranties as to the condition of the real property. But it makes no representations to adjacent parcels or corners. Is it an historic ordinance, historic district ordinance? Is it a resource protection area? It does actually talk about sex offenders here. It makes no representation. The purchaser advised to exercise whatever due diligence. Dam break inundation zone. Stormwater detention facility, wastewater system, solar energy collection devices, special flood hazard areas, conservation or other easements, community development authority. And then it goes on to say may need to complete one or more of the following written disclosures for sale of a dwelling, planning district 15, military air installation, defective drywall, pending building code or zoning ordinance violations, property previous used to manufacture meth. Septic system operation permits, that's the one in regards to those.
This form is basically saying I'm not offering any assurance about any of these items.
Except that I'm telling you that I am going to tell you if it's in a historic, let's see.
If it is,
It is. Historic district ordinance, owner makes no representations to any matters that pertain to whether the provisions of any historic district ordinance affect the property and persons are advised to exercise. It's just saying, you need to figure this out. It's all, every one of them makes no representations.
They're basically, they are almost exclusions that we're not,
That's right.
we're affirming, we're not making any disclosure.
Right. And then this is the one where they sign saying, you need to look at this. This is the form you need. This is the form that explains it all.
And it basically doesn't disclose anything.
No material defect, except for gravel. Except for
Never
drywall.
say-
Well, I thought what it was saying is you may have drywall,
No, you need a disclosure.
If you have defective, whatever.
Chinese, the Chinese
Then
drywall.
you do need to dispose it.
This is affirmative. It just says you may. Similar buyers may need transfers involving the first sale of a dwelling who are exempt from whatever. So example, this first sale of a dwelling, this would be in regards to what Keith Smith's working on right now. He's doing affordable housing downtown. It's a 99-year lease on land. So all that people are doing is buying the house so that they makes it affordable. When they go to sell it, it transfers, and this would be a place where it said, look, you're buying this, but you need to understand, you're not buying the land, you're buying this property, and this buyer, the first buyer is going to get 25% of the equity, and blah, blah, blah. But that's what that's in regards. Planning district, that property is located wholly or partially in any locality comprising planning district 15, which I don't even know where that is. States the builder owner shall disclose in writing any knowledge. Oh, it can't be with us. It's got to be someplace whether mining operations have previously been conducted on the property, or is there presence of any abandoned mines, shaft pits. So this is a statewide form.
And these are disclosures that you have,
Right.
you may have to make.
Yeah, if your property has it. So septic system operating permit, that's in regards to if you've gotten something from the health department, then you would have to, it contains a disclosure requiring regarding the validity of the septic system operating.
That would go on that form.
Well, this just
That's a
signatures as to this. This points you to this, and then you're signing this saying that you,
Where do you disclose? Where do you
There's a
disclose?
separate,
They get that, right?
this, you can have, you want me to autograph it? You can-
No, I don't, I'm trying to understand
No, no.
the actual mechanics of it. I've
You're
got
gonna,
a notice from the health
you're gonna get
department.
this from, oh,
I've got a notice, so I need to disclose it.
then you're gonna get,
Where does it get written down?
the separate one.
it's a separate form.
These
I
are all
got
separate ones.
They all
You're
have,
disclosing that.
Separate
particular
forms.
if it applies to your
Yeah,
list,
give them that
you
specific.
then would pull out new forms.
Yep.
Gotcha, that's the part I was trying to
Perfect.
understand.
Can you make it easier, just put it on an addendum to the contract? Disclose it.
You would.
Yes.
That form would be an addendum to the contract. That's right. That's right. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Good stuff.
Well,
Good
I
stuff.
know, I can grind down on some mechanics.
Oh, that's good. Really good. That's what this is
And
all
I
about.
will say, because
Especially as a
national,
builder.
when you're going through that class, which you guys have, this person was involved in,
Mhm.
when they're teaching you both Virginia and the US,
No,